All right, everyone. Hey there. It is James Gardner here again. This is a second series of Conversations in Courage. I thought it was time to bring it back. And I am privileged and pleased to kick off the second series with a dear, close friend of mine, a soul sister. She is also a colleague of mine, near and dear to my heart with the work that she does. She's also a professional actor and playwright. She's an addiction counselor, and she's here today to talk about the power of creative journaling. So without further ado, I give you Nicolle Nattrass.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction, James.
Wow.
I appreciate it very much. And it's great that you do this series on courage. Courage is one of my, I think it's so important, and it's a theme in all of my work. And I love that you devote a conversation to courage. So
thank you. Well, I think it's some people think it's this mythical force that they need to summon, and some channel it well. Some are looking for it like it's the Holy Grail for them to move out in life and make life what they want of it. And really the premise of the show is just to have conversations with people to show that we all exemplify courage, each in our own way.
kind of like ordinary courage.
It is. We all have it. We all have it. Yeah. And I know we have a lot that we're gonna discuss today in terms of courage, your story, your journaling, the work that you do with kids and adults. But first, I want to congratulate you on your book, your book that was recently published, fairly recently. Is it maybe 2 months? October.
3 weeks ago, maybe.
3 weeks. Wow. It is. It's a book. It's called Just the Two of Us: A Soft Place for Tender Hearts to Land. Great title. And maybe just share a little bit about the book. And I know there's a huge catalyst for the book's creation, but let's just start with a little bit about the book.
Well, thank you so much. Like, I'm just getting used to this idea that I've actually written a book. I found myself saying that the other day. I published a book. It's kind of a surprise. It's one of those happy surprises where I had the idea about 4 years ago for it, but wasn't clear on why I wanted to do it, what the motivation was. And so I actually spent early COVID writing. And yeah, it's really exciting. I ended up contacting someone in New York, the Zebra Inc., Sheila Kennedy, who's a publisher and editor. And I was just absolutely thrilled to be able to publish it.
Yeah, and obviously the courage, there's a lot of courage within this creation of this book in of itself, and also the work that you do with the book for others. So this is, let's first talk about the power of journaling, because it is a lot of this is a creative a book that kind of ties into our creative inner spark for children, for adults, and things like that. So let's talk about some of the work you do with that and the power of journaling.
Well, I've always journaled, like since I was a little kid. And, I remember I still have my first journal, Jimmy. It's, one of these ones, right? 5-year personal diary.
Do you have the little key for it?
I do. I actually lost the key.
Oh.
But, when I think about it, the power of journaling really in almost everything I do. As a professional actor, when we were in theater school, we were always taught, journal, keep a journal, write about what your experience is as you're exploring a play, exploring characters. We often had to submit our journals into our teachers. And as I have grown in my practice as an addiction counselor, I'm always encouraging clients to use journal because of the power that journaling has to reflect back to us our thoughts, our feelings. It really is about saying, like, I matter, my thoughts, my feelings matter, my ideas matter. So, I was just writing about this the other day. Journaling itself has led me to so many different things and fulfillment of goals, like from writing a short film to writing 9 plays to being able to see in myself what it is I want to grow, what it is I want to change. It's so powerful now. And when I first started this kind of work, creative journaling for self-care, there wasn't the scientific research that's actually here now to back up what actually happens to our brains when we take pen to paper and what the connections there are made. So it reduces stress. There's so many benefits. And the thing that I love about it is that it's accessible, right?
It's accessible everywhere.
If all I need is a pen and my journal, right?
Yeah.
Then that's pretty powerful in itself, right?
That's
So
it.
I really love that.
Awesome. So because you taught, there's so many things I think we're just starting to learn in terms of the brain waves, the synapses that fire when we go through this process of writing. From a base level standpoint, I know that it just helps us to get more clear, because this becomes a washing machine of ideas and thoughts and feelings and emotions that we can't really. It's a swirling storm, and writing things down at least helps to kind of create some tangibility to some of that.
It's like a friend of mine who's the International Associate. She's the executive director of International Association for Journal Writing. This is her quote: "Journaling is about intimacy, into me see." And she coined that. And I just think that's so brilliant, because I don't think we can really change something that we're not aware of. And so what happens is when it's in my head, right? When it's in that washing machine, as you say, in my head, I don't necessarily need to pay attention to it. But when I put it down on paper, it's in front of me, and then it's like, it's talking to me. There's an accountability piece there. It's like, what are you going to do about this? It's like, oh, I'm listening. I'm actually listening to Nicolle now, right? So there's that's power. And when I think about creative journaling, and even in the careers that I've had as a professional actor and as a playwright, it's like listening to that creative impulse. I mean, I know you're writing your book, right? And it's like, you listen to that creative impulse. What if that creative impulse was just spinning around in your head for 20 years? It's about listening to it and going, you know what? I don't really know what this means, but I'm going to write it down. That actually takes courage to write it down and go, what is this? Well, I don't know where it's going. So maybe I shouldn't follow it, because, what does it mean? And then, the inner critic can come in, all those, right? Blocks and resistance and all that, to just go, well, what if I just follow it? I mean, that's all someone who decides they're going to write a film or a TV series or a novel or a poem is just listening, tuning into that intimacy.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. Into me see.
Yeah, Linda Monk coined that, and I share it all the time. I just absolutely think it's brilliant.
So Nicolle, what maybe for people that are tuning in here, you could help differentiate. Is there a differentiation between journaling and creative journaling?
Well, for me, there is, for sure. When I was doing workshops in treatment centers, I used to have a lot of the guys actually. So I had a guy come into my workshop and said, "Why is this called creative journaling and not journaling?" And I was just like, "Great question." I said, because to me, being creative means you have freedom of expression. Right? So that means to me, like, anything can be on the page. If you wanted to draw a picture, if you wanted to doodle, if you wanted to grab stickers and put it on the page, if you want to do upside down, throw coffee stains on a piece of paper on your journal. So it really opens up the freedom to not, the freedom to do it wrong. And I think for me, journaling was more associated with like school, and you'd get marked afterwards and
Okay.
make sure your sentences are clear. And creative journaling just kind of blows that out of the water and says, no, actually it's your freedom.
I like that. It's just changing it. It's just an internal switch perception that allows freedom.
Yeah.
Just changing your positioning on it. That's a really good point. Because I think for journaling to be its most powerful, it needs to be free
Mm-hmm.
and needs to have zero limitations, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's a question. The work that you've done, you've worked with adults, you've worked with youth as well,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive in a little bit in terms of your story. So, just the two of us, the book, just the two of
Mm-hmm.
us, not the song, just the
Just the
two
two of
of
us.
us.
That's one of my favorite songs.
There you
I
go.
wrote that song into a play.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. This husband and wife sing just the two of us. I love it.
So we're going to start just going off on tangents at some point. We have
Yes, going off on theater tangents
correct.
because you and I have some synergy there.
Correct. Wait till she does accents, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be next.
That's Jimmy.
Okay, just the two of us though.
Yeah.
The book, it's powerful, and I think what's just
Are
as
you gonna make me cry now?
no. You made me sign a non-disclosure that I would not make you cry. I cry, apparently. Behind that powerful guide to understanding and holding space for tender hearts, a soft place to land, if you will. Behind that is a powerful story in of itself, which is courageous just on its own, in its own right. And so what I'd love for you to do is just to share for us the the catalyst for the book, the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, the inspiration for writing this book, I think that's why I waited. I had the idea 4 years ago, but at 4 years ago, it was still too tender of a situation. And the inspiration for writing the book, it was our family was in a pretty traumatic car accident in 2013. And my son was 4 at the time. All three of us were in the car. And yeah, it actually, it was a tricky thing in the book to not, because that's not what the book is about. The book isn't about this particular story. It's about how I used journaling, creative journaling, to help my son and our family process the accident. And so it was tricky because it's an emotional journey that we went through. It was really difficult to see my son in such distress. It was, because I'd been trained as a counselor to notice what are the signs and symptoms of PTSD. I saw it being played out in front of me. And, my husband was in a car accident and he was severely injured as well. So I found myself in that situation of, trying to take care of my husband to make sure that he was okay, but also noticing what my son was going through. And I immediately started looking around in my community, like, what do you do for a 4-year-old who's going through this? It's not like we can send a 4-year-old to therapy and he can talk it out. So I found myself searching for this. And meanwhile, a lot of people sort of saying, well, just don't talk about it, or, maybe he'll get over it and stuff like that. And it was all very well meaning, but he wasn't. It was, the anxiety was increasing and the behaviors were there. And so I was really lucky to be able to reach out and find a play therapist in Parksville, actually, who started to work with our family. But it was a really, really tough go. And it wasn't just the car accident. The car accident actually was the catalyst for increased anxiety over time. the timing of the car accident was in itself kind of a devastating timing, in that the car accident happened the day after my son's first experience of school. So there was an association made with school and being separated from us. And there was a real panic for him of us not being able to pick him up, that something was going to happen to us. So our whole world really shifted. And to be honest, it's never gone back to the same, because something like that happens, and the trauma was such a fracture for all of us. Even though we all went through it together, we all experienced it completely different, because that's what happens, right? So I rescued my son out of the backseat of the car, and it was a very terrifying experience. Yeah.
So how soon after the accident did you, obviously you were aware of the behavior change right away, obviously picked up on that, that's your profession. When did you first try and sit down and just use art or some type of creative thing to start? Maybe
I always had that practice, right? That's how I wrote my one-woman show, Mamahood Bursting into Light. Was I had a big journal at the time as a new mom, and I would try to capture like really important things. I would grab like an index card in the middle of in between feedings and like write out an idea and stick it in my journal. So because I already had my own journaling practice that was really, really strong, and I like to use these really big blank 8x10 journals, I would stick all my notes in there. Because I already had that, I just started, it was more from my own coping, actually. I would, put it on the table, and I would sometimes sit down and just start drawing, start coloring, start doing something, trying to engage my son to get his mind off the panic and the anxiety. So that's how it started. And he just joined me at the table, and then it became our book. And oftentimes when he was in a good mood or when he was having a really hard time, I would pull out the journal. There's one example in the book where we lost our cat not long after the car accident. I think it was about a month. We decided we'd get a kitten. Parents are like, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Scrambling for ideas.
Scrambling to try to find something for comfort. So we brought a kitten, and the kitten went missing during the day. And it was one of those moments as a parent of you're just like it was just 6 hours of panic for my son, and upset and crying. And I just remember pulling out the journal, and he didn't want to come to the table. I was never directive, like, we're going to do this together. It was never like that. It was always just showing up at the table. And I just started painting. Our cat's name was Ben. I just started painting a bee on the page, like a big bee. And I did that all day. I just kept painting different colors over the bee whenever he'd get upset, and he'd come and kind of scribble. So that started happening. And then I think one day, you mentioned something about the journal pages, but one day in succession, it's like he just pulled out the journal, and he was drawing stuff and talking out loud and saying, this is the car crashing, this is the pieces. And I said, what's that? It's the pieces flying from the car. I think combined with the play therapy that we were doing, he had a place to land. And it makes me emotional thinking about it, because I think if I had just said, this isn't important, like, you'll get over it. Everybody gets over it. Everybody, as a kid, upsetting things happen, right? We don't get through life unscarred. But if I had dismissed it and ignored it, he wouldn't have been able to just have that soft place to land where he could actually just get it out And the other piece that I have to share is that I would say within 4 days after the car accident, every day on our way to doctor's appointments, you know, my husband had doctor's appointments. I had to get checked out. My son had to get checked out. We would run into people, James, older people, like in their 70s and 80s in the waiting room. And I would talk to them because I'm that type of person who wants to kind of engage with people. And inevitably, they tell me a story about a car accident and how they remember being 10 years old or 5 years old, and they could remember every detail. And they said, still, when I drive through that intersection, it's upsetting to me. It's like I couldn't ignore it. I just, everywhere around me, I thought, I can't ignore this. I have to do something about it. And then the cool thing is that just became like a normal thing, this journal with us. So if you went to a restaurant, we'd bring the journal, right? You could, if you went to Grandma and Grandpa's house, we'd bring the journal. And then he would start to go through it. Like he can go through it now and go, oh, that's about this. That day, this happened.
So I'd like to ask you, because I have, actually what I want to do here, I'm just going to try, I've never done this on Conversations in Courage.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen.
Yay.
So we're looking at the drawing of the scribbly lines. You know, and I know these are your words on the side of the page, tire and headlight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at that and yeah, I just find it powerful. And so I'd like, and for everyone listening, I mean, the book is filled with some of these examples of the progression of what your son has gone through from kind of start to later in the process. But Nicolle, share with us, what was it like when he sat down to write, or to draw, not to write, to draw that? Like, it's one thing to make some, you know, something on a page as part of a safe place, but when he started to kind of actually recount some of that night, what went through your mind at that point?
Just so much, you know, I mean, even just talking about it now makes me emotional, because I tended to stay away from that in the book, you know, of just outlining what it was. But, you know, it was very quick. It was very charged. It was very like telling a story and being in the story, him telling the story and being in the story, recounting, picking glass out of his ears, because there was no glass left in the car in this accident. So it was really, really powerful. And yet, you know, it just observing that and not making it out to be larger than it was, right? Because had I been like, oh my God, that was so, I had to really monitor my own reactions, James, right? Because I didn't want to blow it up, but I also didn't want to dismiss it. So it's like, yeah, that happened. And yeah, you're right.
Well,
you know, we thought the car was on fire and Mom got you out of the car. And, you know, he had a bruise and was bleeding here from actually the car seat straps. You know, car seats do protect kids, right? And that was, and, you know, he would talk about that. Yeah, it was really intense.
You were in the kind of the unique position, though, of looking at the situation from two different optics, right? The counselor in you, but then also the mother in you, right? And
yeah, and those two people had two very different reactions.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the mother and me pulled my son out of the car, and I actually ran down the road. Like I ran down the road and I hid in the bushes. That's how strong the impulse for me was. Like, I thought the car was going to start on fire, get him out of the car, run down the road. I actually left my husband there. And that was part of what I was unpacking, because I went to counseling as well, was just my initial reaction was just like, it was to my child, right? So then I had to deal with trying to make sure that he was okay and go back to the accident. They actually had to pull my husband out. Like, it was, yeah. The ambulance attendant actually said to Paul, when they were cutting his clothes off, right? Said, "You're like this close and you wouldn't be here." Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah. Now,
And,
I suspect the work is not over for you either, right?
mhm,
And definitely the journey is still in full effect for your son at this point.
mhm,
What
yeah.
is it become part of your ritual? Like, in other words, is it habit now that that he uses creative journaling on a consistent basis?
Well, now, of course, he's getting to the age where he doesn't want to do any journaling, right?
Oh.
Because he's 11.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a journey. So I would say from age 4 until about 9 or 10, we had our own journal that we worked in. And the great thing about it is that when we go through these journals, he can, again, it's like his own map. And he can go, that happened. Oh, that day I was painting this, I was petting this dog. I remember that. It's like it's a way to identify his journey,
Sure.
right? And so now he's kind of more into like, no, I don't want to journal anymore, which I respect. But I think the point, like, our kids are resilient, and I've seen his resilience, and I also know that he was deeply affected by it.
Yeah.
He just was. We can't, we have both, right? We have our resilience, and we can still be affected by something, right? We never went through that intersection for years. We never went purposely. And now when we go through that intersection, we always talk about, okay, so how are you feeling? What are you noticing?
Hmm.
It's going to be positive, right?
Wow. So this is evolved though. So this whole unfortunate accident incident propelled you on a different path, or slightly different path, or something along those lines, right? I mean, it's always been a part of what you are in creative journaling and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's given way to kind of this. I think your phrase is it's a tender-hearted revolution,
Yes.
right? And now this has become something bigger than you and your son and your husband.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's spreading its wings, and it's impacting other people and other relationships
Mm-hmm.
with parent-child, teacher-child, guardian-child, even just adults in general, to like partners, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So tell us a little bit about Tenderhearted Revolution. Why can't I say that? Tenderhearted Revolution.
Well, I think I wrote that it's a tender-hearted guide because I think that sometimes, I think that if we ignore what's going on in our hearts, that, you know, we become closed off. We become cynical, we lose our dreams, we lose, you talk about it, that sense of wonder and innocence. And so I really believe that my work, when I look at all of my work, it's really about how I've maintained my tender heart, how I cared for my son's tender heart, how I care for clients' tender hearts. Even as an actor, how do you connect with an audience is through the heart, right? When you're on stage, and certainly when I'm writing as a playwright, they'll always talk about, well, what's the heart of the play? To me, that's like the funnest part to write.
Mm.
And the other day I was writing, like, why do I call it a tender-hearted revolution, the work that I'm doing? Because sometimes it takes the strength and power of a revolution to keep your heart tender. And saying that feels so good to me, because I think for the longest time, certainly in my 20s and 30s, it's not cool to have a tender heart. And like, I want to change the world, and I
Right.
want kindness, and I want a tender-hearted revolution, so that like, that's the next thing. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if actually we went, you know what? Sometimes it takes the strength and power of a revolution to keep your heart tender. Isn't that lovely?
Say that again for us, Nattrass.
Sometimes it takes the power and strength of a revolution to keep your heart tender.
Wow.
And like, what if we were told that as kids? Like, that's important, like, keep your heart tender, right? Because
Wow.
from my point of view, we grow up, we put ourselves in these situations where that's not a value. And I think it needs to be a value.
Well, it's a value that gets stripped away from us. I think I talk about this, and you've seen some of my conversations and stuff. We inevitably, there's a point where we walk through that doorway of lost innocence, right? And it's expectation. It's all these other things that seem to kind of pull away that tenderness that we have instinctively when we're kids. We do. We do that sense of wonder, like you were referring to, that I always mention. It's done from a tender heart, of course. Right? What child doesn't greet the day each and every day with a tender heart? And it's only, it's kind of like the hard cold steel of reality, of real life, whatever that means, that has seemed to make that grow hard and callous.
Well, and it's also like, how do we support people to keep their tender heart, right? What are the things we can do? And I think that's why, like, when COVID-19 struck, I was just like, I released a sample chapter of the book, and I thought, I'm just going to release a sample chapter to everyone I know, because, folks were home, homeschooling, kids were home, they're stressed out, playgrounds are closed. I thought, this is the time to release a sample chapter. And then I thought, oh, I think I have to write this now. Like, it's just, it's the time now to do it, because our kids can have support. And a lot of times as parents, gosh, we want to have the answers for our kids. We want to have the solutions. And yet parents are going through all this stress. We got our own stuff going on. Kids are picking up on that. What if I could offer a simple tool that could actually support a child and a parent to have a soft place to land right now? Because that's what support is. That's what support is. You would do that with your best friend. If your best friend's going through a hard time, you'd say, you know what? I'm going to offer my support. I'm going to listen. I'm going to provide this support to you. We can do it for each other. We don't need to, take a special course to do it. I mean, I talk about outlining some directions in the book about how to do it, but it's accessible. It's this accessible thing, right?
Do me a favor, Nicolle.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. I'm going to switch my mics here. Okay.
Are you getting feedback?
Let's see. All right. Can you hear me, Nicolle?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Are you getting feedback?
I was getting a little bit of feedback periodically.
Yeah, that's been happening on my end. Maybe I'm the one who should be wearing the headphones.
I think you're the culprit.
I'm the culprit, I think.
But it's okay. It would be like whenever I didn't talk for a bit, and then when I first started to talk, it would kind of get some feedback. But
okay,
no biggie. The thing is, though, you talk about a soft place to land, and you, myself, other people in our kind of collective group of coaches and business owners and just people, we always talk about holding space, right? Holding space for each other, holding space for our clients. And really, in this instance, it's the journal is holding the space for the parent, for the adult.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice to get that distinction for me. That was really powerful.
And you know, the other piece that you're talking about, the expectations, right? When expectations come in, then we can get off track, right? So it's the same thing in the guide with the journal, is that if I have all these expectations and I'm standing over my child while they're working on a page, going, well, no, that's not how you do it, and do this here and do that here. Do you see what happens? It closes it down, shuts it down. But if it's just like, you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, I'm just here. My presence is actually holding space too. Like the journal is the container, right? But it's not the only holding space. We as parents, as adults, as coaches, as counselors, as friends, hold that space too, by not jumping in and just like listening, right?
Yeah. So Nicolle, just the two of us. So this book, whom would it help?
Parents, children, counselors, like you said, guardians. I mean, really, grandparents, anybody who has a child in their life. I mean, this book is mostly a guide for kids ages 4 to 11 or 12. So in that age range, for sure. And, you know, our mutual friend Dory has also suggested this book would be excellent, and I'm really trying to get it out to pediatric wards, right? Where we have kids going through cancer treatment, we've got kids going through all kinds of stuff, and to be able to have this guide, right, available for parents, for nurses, for caregivers to be able to do that, I think would be so good. I'm really hoping, you know, that I can reach those folks as well.
Yeah. And you will. It's something that needs to happen. This idea, it is a cathartic piece that can really help help children and help, and ultimately too help adults that still desperately need to reconnect to that tender heart themselves. You know, and you and I have had many conversations about that. You know, that kind of leading with love, and that kind of all in with love approach. And it's very freeing and very powerful. And I think this is a beautiful way for them to work on themselves in addition to helping their child, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, just with increased stress, worry, trauma, anything that, you know, and I think that's why it came up for me during COVID, of just imagining kids' anxiety, right? I mean, all of us in early COVID were trying to figure out, well, do we have to wash all our groceries? What about touching things? Like all of that, right? For kids who might already have anxiety, then we're ramping up a little bit, right? With families maybe losing work, being more stressed out. Again, there's a ramping up, right? So yeah, and I'm available to do consultations as well with the guide. So you can purchase the guide on its own, or you can purchase the guide and set up a consultation with me. And I'm also, thank you to Dory, selling it as a journal together kit. And that was Dory's idea, a brilliant idea, where you can buy a journal and the book with it, with some stickers and a couple of pens to get you started. It's exciting.
Cool.
You know, it's kind of a dream come true for me. You know, I won the Creative Writing Award when I was in grade 9. And I have this picture of me, and I didn't plan this, but this is a picture of me when I was a kid. And what am I doing? I'm writing, right?
So
And
so Nicolle,
yeah.
if you could, because I know in the book you talked about sitting down with your son and just grabbing some crayons for that first time, and sitting side by side. He has a page, you have a page. it stuck me. What stuck with me was the power of crayons.
Mhm.
And if you could sit down with little mini Nattrass over there, and she takes a page, the left side of the page, and you take the right side of the page,
Mhm.
what would you both draw, do you think?
Mm. Yeah, probably very cliche but true. Probably a whole bunch of hearts because I love hearts. That's what I say. Hearts.
That's because you
Yeah.
have a big one.
Yeah, I do. That's what.
That's good.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So what's on the future? We'll wrap this up, but what's on the future for Nattrass? What's on the horizon? Yes, we have to
Well,
call her by her last name. It's just the way it
yeah,
is.
yeah, Gardner. Well, the other piece is that I want to say thank you to you because you were at our writing group when I was just talking about writing this, and so you're thanked in the book as well. I was lucky to be in an environment where I was really supported. So what is next for me is I am doing, what am I doing? I've just been nominated for Women Who Inspire. It's an online conference, and that's happening November 15th. I'm going to be their opening speaker for the conference and was nominated by a good colleague and friend of mine, Carrie Isham.
Mhm.
And what else is happening? Well, Tina Overbury and I are going to be shooting a sketch conversation series called Death by Small Talk, which you might have a small cameo in, Jimmy.
That's hilarious, you guys.
Yep. And, I am working on launching, I have a couple of courses, Creative Journaling for Self-Care. That's an online course through the International Association for Journal Writing. I'm promoting that. And I am also going to be kind of transitioning from addiction counseling to more Tenderhearted Revolution coaching. So I'm excited to launch that program. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's
Mhm.
exciting, right? I mean, and you because you are creating a revolution. You're changing.
One
You're shifting.
heart at a time,
One heart at a time.
right? You have a couple hearts I see in the back there.
I
You've got
do.
hearts,
I
right?
do.
I
Yeah.
noticed that right away.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I wear my heart pretty much out for the world to see.
Yeah.
Took a while to get there, but it's amazing. So
Yep.
it's
That's
powerful.
awesome.
So listen, Nicolle, thank you for having the courage to share some of your your personal story and
Thank
opening
you.
up a private world of yourself to us, to because it ultimately has fueled you now to help not only your son and your husband and the family
Mm-hmm.
and many more.
Mm-hmm.
And a revolution is en masse, and so you are going to be affecting and impacting on a multitude of levels. So I love this chat with you, and I love the power that you bring to creative journaling and just the power of writing. It does ooze from you. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You convey stuff in a way that really resonates with a lot of people. So
Thank you, Jimmy.
Jimmy, you are making the world a better place, and
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you spending some time with me, Nicolle.
Thank you very much for inviting me, James.
Now, can you like give us a send off, maybe like a Scottish, like
James
send off?
Gardner, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. Look forward to seeing you another time over coffee or tea, maybe.
A biscuit.
Bring your journal. Bring your damn journal.
Oh my God. All right. Love
Take
you,
care.
Nicolle. And
too.
thank you all for tuning in. Mad love to the courageous, as I always say. Love you guys. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.